Over the past few years, a new word has been popping up more and more in conversations about health, fitness, and longevity. Peptides. You'll hear people talking about peptides for fat loss, peptides for muscle recovery, peptides for better sleep, and even peptides for performance in the bedroom. Some people claim they're the next big breakthrough in medicine. Others say they're just another trend in the world of performance optimization. And for many men, the biggest problem is that no one seems to clearly explain what peptides actually are. So what exactly are peptides? Are they medications? Are they supplements? And why are so many men suddenly interested in them? Hi, I'm Dr. Fashir, a men's health physician, and in this video we are going to break down what peptides actually are, how they work in the body, why they've become so popular in recent years, and the different categories of peptides that people are commonly talking about today. Because once you understand what peptides really are, the whole topic becomes much easier to make sense of. Let's start with the basics. At the most fundamental level, peptides are simply short chains of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks that make up proteins. When a small number of amino acids link together, they form a peptide. When many amino acids link together, they form a protein. So in simple terms, peptides are essentially very small proteins. But here's where things get interesting. Your body naturally produces many peptides on its own. These peptides act as signaling molecules, meaning they send instructions between cells and tissues throughout the body. Some peptides signal your body to release hormones. Others regulate metabolism, appetite, sleep, immune function, and tissue repair. In other words, peptides are part of the body's natural communication system. Scientists have been studying peptides for decades because of their ability to influence many biological processes. And over time, researchers have learned how to create synthetic peptides that mimic some of these natural signals. This is one of the main reasons peptides have become more widely discussed in health and fitness communities. People are interested in whether certain peptides might help influence processes like fat metabolism, muscle recovery, hormone regulation, and tissue healing. But before we go further, it's important to understand something. Peptides are not all the same. The word peptide actually refers to a very large category of molecules. Some peptides are used in mainstream medicine, others are still being studied in research settings. And some peptides have become popular in wellness and performance communities, even though the scientific evidence is still evolving. So instead of thinking about peptides as one single thing, it's better to think of them as different categories of signaling molecules that affect different systems in the body. Let's look at some of the categories that people are most commonly talking about. One category involves peptides related to growth hormone signaling. Growth hormone plays an important role in metabolism, muscle maintenance, bone health, and tissue repair. Certain peptides are designed to stimulate the body's natural release of growth hormone. Examples that are often discussed include peptides that stimulate growth hormone releasing pathways. The idea behind these peptides is not to replace growth hormone directly, but to signal the body to release more of its own growth hormone. Researchers have studied these pathways for years because growth hormone levels naturally decline as people age. However, it's important to remember that hormone systems in the body are tightly regulated, and altering them can have complex effects. Another category that people frequently discuss involves peptides related to metabolism and fat regulation. Some peptides influence appetite signaling and how the body processes nutrients. In fact, certain medications used for weight management today work by mimicking natural peptide hormones involved in appetite regulation. These signals affect how the brain responds to hunger and fullness. Because of this, scientists have been studying peptide-based treatments for metabolic health and weight management for many years. Another group of peptides that receives attention involves tissue repair and recovery. Some peptides have been investigated for their potential role in supporting healing processes. Researchers have studied certain peptides for their effects on blood vessel formation, inflammation control, and tissue regeneration. This has made them particularly interesting in fields like sports medicine and injury recovery. However, research in this area is still ongoing, and many of these peptides are still being studied to better understand their long-term safety and effectiveness. There are also peptides involved in intimacy and hormone signaling, which is one reason this topic comes up frequently in men's health discussions. Hormones and neurotransmitters that regulate reproductive function and overall male performance often rely on peptide signaling pathways. Because of this, researchers have investigated certain peptides that influence these pathways. But again, the science in this area varies depending on the specific compound being discussed. Now, before we continue, if you're finding this explanation helpful and you're interested in learning more about men's health, hormones, and metabolic science, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the channel and allows me to keep making more educational videos like this. Alright, let's continue. One of the reasons peptides have gained so much attention recently is because of advances in biotechnology. In the past, producing peptide-based therapies was much more difficult and expensive. But modern biotechnology has made it easier to study and manufacture these molecules. As a result, scientists are now exploring hundreds of peptide-based treatments for various medical conditions. In fact, several medications used today are actually peptide-based therapies. This includes treatments used for metabolic disorders, hormone regulation, and certain endocrine conditions. So peptides themselves are not new. What's new is the growing interest in how they might be applied in different areas of health. But with that growing interest also comes a lot of confusion. Some people believe peptides are a shortcut to better performance or faster results. Others assume they are completely safe because they are natural. In reality, the truth is somewhere in between. Because peptides influence powerful signaling pathways in the body, their effects depend heavily on the specific compound being used, the dose, the duration, and the individual's underlying health. That's why medical supervision and proper research are so important when discussing any therapy that affects hormonal or metabolic pathways. Another important factor to consider is regulation. Some peptides are approved medications used under medical supervision. Others are still considered research compounds. This distinction matters because approved medications undergo extensive clinical testing to evaluate safety, effectiveness, and long-term outcomes. Research compounds, on the other hand, may still be in earlier stages of investigation. Understanding this difference helps people separate scientifically supported treatments from experimental compounds that may still require more study. So when people ask the question, do peptides work? The real answer depends on which peptide you're talking about. Some peptide-based therapies are well established in medicine. Others are still being actively researched. And some have gained attention in fitness communities before the science has fully caught up. The key takeaway is that peptides are essentially messenger molecules. They influence communication between cells and tissues throughout the body. Because of that, they have the potential to affect many biological systems. But with that potential also comes complexity. Understanding how these signals interact with metabolism, hormones, and cellular function is an active area of scientific research. And this is why the conversation around peptides continues to evolve. As new research emerges, scientists are learning more about how these signaling molecules can be used in medicine and how they interact with different biological systems. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos where we break down complex health topics in a clear and practical way. And I'm curious, when you hear people talking about peptides, what's the main question that comes to mind for you? Let me know in the comments. I'm Dr. Fashir, and I'll see you in the next video.